Welcome to the Thriving Children podcast, the show that helps parents and teachers to put the magic back in child development. Here's your host, Claire Crew.
This is episode 120 of the Thriving Children podcast. On today's episode, I'm welcoming back Gill Connell from Moving Smart, who also shared her time and knowledge with us last week. Hello, Gill.
Hi, how you going, Claire? It's lovely to be back.
It is nice to chat again. Last week we spoke probably more generally about the massive importance that movement has in early childhood. And so this time around we are revisiting something that we didn't get a chance to dive into last time around, which is something you've developed called the Kinetic Scale. So what is it, Gill?
Well, I guess that lots of people think that their children are active. You know, I have lots of parents who say to me, oh, my child's really active. He's outside kicking the soccer ball all the time. I don't need to worry about any of this stuff that you're talking about. And that got me thinking, Claire, that that's only one aspect of physical development. And the brain requires a well-balanced physical diet in which to be able to grow. And so I was inspired by the food pyramid. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it gives you a guideline into what food groups you need to eat, and proportionally what should you eat and how much of everything you should eat. And I just had this brainwave, well, you know, we need so many different aspects of physical development to develop the brain. So let me put this into some kind of organizing principle that teachers and parents can look at and go, oh, yep, I'm doing this. Oh, I need to do more of this. So I guess what I did first of all was identify the food groups. And if you think about it in those terms, it kind of makes it more interesting. So if you'd like me to, I can go through the Kinetic Scale and talk to you a little bit about what the food groups are that we've identified and what their role is, and why do you need these kinds of things in your daily physical diet.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Yep, let's go.
Okay. So the Kinetic Scale is divided into two sides, the sensory side and the motor side. And there are three major food groups in each section. What you'll also notice if you see a visual of this is that each one of these food groups sits on reflexes and pivots on language. And I guess that what gets me up in the morning is one of the things is the critical importance of having language alongside activity and physical development and physical experience, because that makes the language real. And I think we're going to talk about that at some other point. So let me just focus on the six food groups as I see them. The first one is sensory. And I think we're all familiar with the importance of sensory play, seeing, hearing, feeling, smelling, tasting, the five senses we're all aware of. I think what's critical for us to understand is that we use sensory information right throughout our lives, and sensory information helps us to figure out what things are, what they might be if we don't know, what we like, what we don't like. It gives us our own individual take on the world. For instance, if you're going to buy a pair of trousers at a store, you like the look of it. You may pick up the material and smell it, but more likely you're going to feel it to see if you like the texture. If you use all of your five senses when you are in the process of doing most things. And I think in early childhood in particular, when we talk about sensory, we focus on messy play. But messy play is just one aspect of it. It is, for instance, developing your visual skills, developing your auditory skills, all of those things are a big part of the sensory food group, if you like. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about, Claire. When I talk about visual, I've been a classroom teacher for a long time, and many of the children can't, one of the things that I need to do is to help children to learn to read. And if they don't have the visual foundations required for tracking and developing what we call acuity, which is your ability to be able to see at any distance and focus and being able to shut out extraneous visual information and just focus on print, and eye fitness, which is the muscles that drive the eyes, being able to track across the page without getting too tired, that kind of stuff is included in the sensory bubble. So we include right from sensory, messy, gooey, tactile play to massage, to visual, to auditory. All of those kinds of things come under this one food group. If I can go back to that visual example, we notice often that kids come into the classroom and they start with reading, or we see them doing things like rubbing their eyes, blinking a lot, getting watery eyes, being off track, sort of instead of focusing on the print, they're looking up at the ceiling, they're looking at all over the place. And this, if we don't understand this as a teacher or as a parent, we think our kids are off task. We think they're not focusing. But in actual fact, if children haven't spent enough time developing all of these visual foundations, which incidentally, the best place to do that is playing outside when your eye can see long distance and then up close, where it gets peripheral vision, where you get convergence. All of those things develop naturally in the outdoors. Then we find children show us those kinds of behaviours. And that for me is a message that, hey, these children need activities that are specifically developed to grow a child's visual foundational skills. And it might be something as simple as blowing feathers and catching them in a cup, or lying on the floor on your tummy with a partner in front of you and blowing a ping pong ball with a straw and watching the ball go backwards and forwards. And I used to do an activity with my kids in the classroom every day after lunch. They would lie on the mat and I would put some Baroque music on, and this particular day I gave them an ice cream stick, and I was shooting bubbles out of my bubble gun. And the assistant principal came along and she was looking in the window, and she came in and she said, "Oh, Jill, what are you doing? That looks really interesting." I said, "We're reading." And the point of that story is I can't teach a child to read if they haven't got the physical foundations. And so if you use the kinetic scale in every food group, it will give you all the different aspects. You can have a child who's very good at sport but still has visual tracking issues, or all sorts of things are related to that. So that's the sensory food group. And just as an aside, Claire, what we have developed in Move, Plan, Learn with Smart Steps are activities that go right from birth right through to automated movement, so 6 or 7 year olds, that focus on these different aspects, and they're all coded with the kinetic scale. So it's very easy for you to go and find activities to do.
Yeah, because
because
something you talk about as well in regards to the kinetic scale is that it does tilt based on the child's stage of development, but you tend to focus not so much on a specific age. And that is really important, as you were saying, in regards to school-age children, for example. Just because most of them are 5, it doesn't mean that they have that same amount of readiness for things like academic tasks. So I love that idea of having the scale tilt to meet children where they're at and using those activities to support that further.
Yeah, and the idea of it tilting is that the activities will change according to the developmental progress of the child, and it's not a race. It's if any of you have my book, Moving Child to Learning Child, you'll see on page 34 there's a double page spread called The Evolution of Movement, and it's a step by step look into how movement develops. And what I love about it is there's no age on it. It's it's a step by step, and some kids will spend a long time on one stage and then they'll move quickly through others. But it is sequential, and it shows the whole development for the child. So it's non-threatening. I think we can get very tied up with age and the importance of age versus development, but really every child's on its own journey, and it's important to respect that. So what we've done is we've geared the activities to the developmental stage we've broken the evolution of movement up into groups, and the activities change, or the emphasis of the kinetic scale ingredients changes according to where your child's at developmentally.
So what else is on the kinetic scale as well as that of the senses?
Well, I talked last interview about balance, and the most advanced form of balance is to be still, and we can't teach a child to sit still by practicing sitting still. And that the movement patterns associated with balance are rolling, spinning, and being upside down. Do you want me to elaborate on that any more, or shall I move?
I think move on. I think we've got that one covered. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the second one. The third one in the sensory group is what we've called intuition. Now, intuition it's complex, but it is all about my understanding of my body. So where I am in space, what I look like, so what does my body map look like, how much force do I use when I'm doing activities, and where in my spatial awareness. So I can talk a little bit about each one of those things. Where I am in space is actually a very interesting concept. And I will ask your listeners to do something for me. While you're listening to this, I want you to put your thumb, you could do this too, Claire, put your thumb above your head so you can't see it. And with your other finger, see if you can touch your thumb.
As in finger on my other hand, or the same hand? So
your thumb on your left hand,
if you're driving.
Yeah, no, exactly. If you put your thumb above your head so you can't see it. And then with your other hand, put one finger on your thumb. So see if you can try and connect them. And the thing is, and then do that 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 times. And what you'll find is every time you do it, it improves, and you can do it. So this is all about position. Now, why I'm talking to you about this is you've probably noticed that lots of kids touch stuff all the time. They have to be touching something in order to be able to orientate themselves. So how you figure out your position, because it is not reliant on your visual skills. It is about sensing where you are. And what I mean by that is, how many of you have walked down a step and you think there's an extra step there? And so you anticipate that, and you kind of trip over the step. Or here's another example. When you go away on holiday, you don't sleep very well because you don't like the feel of the bed, or somebody swaps your pillow over and it feels different. Now, why I got you to do that activity is to demonstrate that in every muscle, tendon, and ligament, you have what we call proprioceptors. And those proprioceptors are sending information. So when you touch, you get a proprioceptive message that is sent back to the cerebellum, and the cerebellum stores positional information. And every time you get a message, a sensory message, that is reinforced. So you get into the same bed every night, you get the same sensory messaging, you feel safe, you know how wide the bed is, you won't roll out of the bed when you roll over. But when you go away for the weekend or you sleep in a strange bed, you wake up when you roll over, and you wake up when you go to the bathroom, because your body has not recorded position and is not familiar. It is incredibly interesting and fascinating and hard to explain. But the important thing for us to understand about children is, because they're growing all of the time, they need constant reinforcement because their body shape changes. So they are always touching. They'll come up to you and they'll lean into you when they're talking to you. They'll be, 3 centimeters away from your face when they're talking to you. They'll walk around your house and they'll touch everything. They can't help themselves because they need that proprioceptive feedback to be able to help them to understand their position in relation to other things. So
that makes so much sense.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. I could talk about this kind of stuff forever. We don't ever stop doing that. So how do you know, when you go to a store and you pick up a pair of trousers, how do you know when you pick those up? You say to yourself, oh, they're not going to fit me. How do you know that? Because every day you are feeling, when you pull your trousers on in the morning, you feel how wide you are, and your brain records that. So if the pair of trousers is a lot smaller, your hands will be closer together, and therefore you will know that those trousers won't fit you. It is a fascinating area, and I think one that we don't give kids enough credit for. That they are doing what they need to do. They're fitting themselves under things. They're crawling under things. They're trying very hard to figure out their body space. So it is related to spatial awareness, this proprioception, but spatial awareness is visual, your visual understanding of space. And this is all part of this this kinetic food group as well. If you're a teacher, you'll understand where I'm coming from here. You have the kid who thinks they can fit in a space, but accidentally at mat time, but accidentally sits on top of somebody else or pushes somebody else out of the way. And that's because they can't judge visually that space in relation to their own space. And so, doing activities where kids are fitting themselves through, around, between, under, over, and doing it carefully is critical. And you notice kids doing these things in the playground all the time. As well, part of this food group is related to how much force I use. So kids who pick up a crayon and they'll push too hard and break the crayon, or they make a hole in the paper, that's because they don't have enough understanding of their muscle strength to be able to understand how much force to use. They're not being naughty by doing those kinds of things. And this is kind of what really excites me, is that there's a reason for all of these behaviours, and there's wonderful, fun things you can do. For your early childhood kids, they love pushing things around your centre, pulling cars and dolls' prams and, pouring things and all of those things that require me to figure out how much strength, hammering, carpentry, all of those things are helping kids learn about how much force they need to use. And that's all part of this food group as well. And then there is also the, what do I look like? So my body map, and it's not about being able to draw yourself. It's about understanding what parts of my body are connected to what parts, and how do I see myself? And doing activities where children, here's a great activity, rolling a ball along and asking a child to stop the ball with his elbow, or stop the ball with his wrist, or stop the ball with his nose. He's hearing the language of body, and he's having a visual, auditory, and kinesthetic experience of that part of the body. And that's the stuff that helps children build up a body map of themselves. Kids understand their body map. They learn it from top to bottom and from inside to out. It's a process, and we just need to help children. Even when your little person's little and you're putting their cardigan on, I'm putting your left hand through the sleeve, and I need to find your wrist, and you're touching those body parts and you're talking that language so that children build up an understanding of their body map, I guess. And that's the sensory part.
Lovely. All right. Should we move on to the next food group?
Anything else you need to know about that one? Yeah. Okay. So the other end is the motor group, and the first part of that is power. So we talk a lot about gross and fine motor. I like to talk about power because all muscles, both large and small, need power. So what we're talking about here is doing activities that are all about agility, flexibility, perseverance, bringing in things like huff and puff for your child so that, you know, they're learning to feel like what it's like to have elevated heart rate, being able to do something more than once and do it for a continuous amount of time, doing things like yoga poses and Pilates poses and things where you're developing control and stability and all of those things. I was in a preschool a little while ago, and I wanted to do a power activity. So they had a beanbag and a hoop. So I thought, right, I'll just try this activity. So I got down on the floor with the children, and I had the beanbags beside me. I put the hoop about 2 meters away, maybe less. And I went down on all fours, and then I got up and I sort of made a plank with my body. And I picked up the beanbags one at a time and I threw them into the hoop. And I could do 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I could do more than many of the children who couldn't maintain that position because they didn't have sufficient upper body strength. Those kinds of activities are critical for children to develop power. Pulling yourself along on a plank like a snake. So kids walk along your outdoor play areas. They might walk, they might crawl along. How about saying something like this to the children if you're specifically wanting to develop upper body? Hey, I wonder how a snake would crawl across that plank. Can you show me? I wonder if you could show me how a snake crawls across that. So what does the child do? Lies down on its tummy, pulls itself along with its arms. And immediately you've got an activity that's related to power. Children don't know why you're doing it, but you know that this is going to help children with their muscle tone and muscle strength. Hanging is another really important one. Monkey bars are awesome. And don't get me started on monkey bars. We could do a whole podcast on monkey bars, really.
Thing. Yep, I'm with you.
Oh, no, I'm not going to go there. Well, yeah.
Oh, you mean the benefits?
I know the benefits, but the safety thing does my head in because, they don't need to be very high for little people to swing on.
No.
They just, they don't even need to be a metre high. And if they're supervised and we teach children how to grip with their thumb underneath and you've got that lovely cortical grip, taking their own body weight is critical. Otherwise, what they're going to do, Claire, is hang on your towel rail at home, or they're going to hang on the side of the table. They're going to do all of those things because nature says that's part of who I am and what I need to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then there is coordination, and this is a highly complex one, but if I can just talk very high level on this one, this is about your coordination and your development of midlines. And, when children are young, they don't have midlines and they don't have the ability to cross their midlines. We have 3 midlines. I can't explain this. From your head right down the middle of your body, then across your waist. So you've got top and bottom movement and down the middle of your body. I'm not explaining that very well. It's very hard to do it when
it's like you've been sliced into. So you've got a front and a back.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you've got 3 of these. And these develop over a period of time. And in order to be able to develop them, you need to do activities where one side of your body does something different from another. So doing things like with streamers, one up, one down, crossing your body over, banging, having sticks and playing an instrument with one hand while the other hand stays still. Crawling, climbing, all of those things will help develop coordination. But I guess the thing that I really want to focus on here is, Claire, the importance of coordination in relation to learning. That not only is coordination important for your physical prowess, for sport, for dance, for all of those things, but it's critical for what we call concepts of print and understanding the direction of print, understanding where print begins and ends, understanding which way round the A forms. And we know that kids who haven't developed their midlines often do things like right back to front, reverse letters, do all of the things that we go, oh my gosh, she's going to be dyslexic. And it's not really anything to do with that. It is about your midline. And midline can mature around 4, or it still can be going, in terms of development at 7, particularly boys. We know that boys are quite often develop their midline later. And I never used to, as a teacher, correct children when they reversed letters. I would just model, correct the way it should be drawn, but make a note to myself, I need to get that child climbing up the ladders. I need to get that child crawling. I need to get that child doing some hopping, doing activities, jumping, doing scissor jumps over ropes, all sorts of activities, bear walking, crocodile walking, all sorts of things that will help a child learn and develop that he has 2 sides of the body and that they can do different things. So in closing on that one, I don't want people to panic about their kids reversing. It is really critical that you understand that there is a huge relationship between physical development and what goes down on the paper. So, and be patient, because sometimes it can take a long time.
And sometimes, it is because we're just expecting too much too soon in regards to formal literacy. Children need a childhood first.
Well, fascinatingly enough, childhood is already pre-programmed in the child. Play is going to develop this stuff naturally if we give children the space to do it. We just get very uptight about making sure that that we focus on the formal, but we forget about how it develops. And that's why Moving Smart's been created, really, to help people to understand the why behind it. The last food group is control. And I love this one because this is how you individualize any activity. Can I do something? Once I've achieved and I can do a movement like hopping, can I do it backwards? Can I do it fast? Can I do it slow? Can I do it zigzag? Can I do it down low? Can I do it up high? Can I do it holding my friend's hand? How else can I do it? And this is all about the child having the control to be able to do this. In little ones, putting music on and then pushing the pause and watching them try to freeze. Impossible. That tells you that I haven't got control yet. So I need to learn these different ways. And as teachers and parents, it's really important for you to say to a child things like, I was watching a child on a seesaw and he was standing up on the seesaw and he was rocking it from side to side. He said, hey, watch me. I can make it go up and down. And I said, wow, that's amazing. I bet you can't do that slowly. And he looked at me and he said, yes, I can, watch. He was figuring out how to do it. And I had just given him a challenge of how else could he do it, and he rose to that. And that's actually key. How I said it, I bet you can't do it. Well, any boy is going to be challenged by saying that. But this method in my madness, I just want the child to do it a different way. So those are the 6 food groups, Claire, in a nutshell. Very, very quick. So I'll just review them. There's sensory, balance, intuition, power, coordination, and control. and they all pivot on reflexes, but that's for another day.
You might just have to be a permanent podcast guest too.
Can I just say in closing, Claire, that the Kinetic Scale is designed for teachers and parents to go to their shed and say, instead of saying, what have I not got out today? To say, what have I got for sensory? What have I got for balance? What have I got? And use the Kinetic Scale as a guiding principle. So that's it in a nutshell.
Brilliant. I think you have done really well to describe that in this audio format, because I know obviously in the book you've got the visual of it as well, so I've got it in my head because I've got the book as you've described it, but I think that you've done it with enough clarity that even people that haven't seen the imagery will get exactly what you're talking about.
Thanks, Claire. If you go onto our Moving Smart blog, which is on our website, there is actually a blog about the Kinetic Scale, and you'll be able to see the visual there too.
Brilliant. Well, what I'll do then is I'll link that in the show notes, and that way,
yes.
As people, they won't know until obviously they get to the end of the episode, because that's when we're saying it at this point in time, but then they can go and have a look, and, if it is a little bit foggy, they can go, like now I really get it. It's such an interesting way to interpret children's behaviours and things that they're doing, but also, as you were saying, from that programming and planning and creating a nurturing environment point of view as well.
Okay, that's great. And on that blog, incidentally, there is a little short video, and it does have a little bit of an explanation on that as well, so you might be able to point people in that direction as well.
Absolutely. I will do some hunting and include that in the show notes. So
Brilliant.
Thank you, Gill, for part 2 of being on the Thriving Children podcast. Before you go, can you please share where we can find you and your books again?
Sure. You can find us at movingsmart.co.nz. That's our website. We're on Facebook at Moving Smart, and you can get the books on our website. You can get them on places like Amazon, Fishpond, Book Depository, all of the websites that are available. So, I hope you enjoy them.
Absolutely. And we are going to have at least one more chat with you, Gill. Not for a while, though, because you've got some travel coming up. But I think we definitely need to have another conversation about language and how that fits into this movement and development piece.
Cool. Look forward to it, Claire.
Okay. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Thriving Children podcast. Until next time, be kind to yourself.
Thanks for listening to the Thriving Children podcast. For even more goodness, visit thrivingchildren.com.au.